Remake Rewind.
All right, thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if remakes or reboots should have happened. I'm Mike, as always, and with me, I've got David Delgado. How you doing, David?
What up, Mike? I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm tired. I just moved, and my life's a mess.
It's a mess because of all the moving?
All that, and just, life.
Well, moving's a struggle all the time.
Yeah, it sucks.
I hope it gets better for you, Mike.
Yeah, I hope so too. And then also, I guess I might as well just announce this. For people who've listened to the show for a long time, we've had two different guests from Get to the Podcast. Recently, in our Batman episode, we had Diego de Souza, and on our Willy Wonka episode, we had Nick Gambino. And they actually had me guest star on an episode that'll be coming out a week after this episode airs. So in about 2 weeks as of recording, or a week after you guys get to listen to this fresh new episode. So look out for that. It's going to be pretty good. I'm going to be talking about where I think the Marvel movies are going to be going in the next few years after Infinity War. It was a pretty fun podcast. And yeah, you guys should definitely check it out. That's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. So yeah, check it out. It was really fun guest starring on another episode. I had to be up super early, but it was worth it.
Get to the podcast.
And then, yeah, Double D, why don't you tell them what we're going to be talking about this episode, though?
We watched The Italian Job and The Italian Job.
So why did you pick these movies, Mr. David Delgado?
I remember liking the 2003 Marky Mark version of it, and I'd never seen the original, so I figured, hey, it's a remake. We should watch this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that was perfectly logical there.
Yeah, totally. So I was a big fan of the 2003 one. I didn't see it in theaters, but I remember my parents rented it, and I really, really liked it. So I ended up going and buying it on DVD. And
nice.
It's been a few years since I've watched it, but I remembered thoroughly enjoying the movie, and it's one of those movies that you don't watch over and over and over again, so every time you watch it, you kind of forget some of the stuff that happened. So it's probably been like 5 years since I've watched it, so it was interesting watching it again.
No, it was a cool movie. It's still pretty good. I guess we'll talk about it when we get to it. But,
yeah, absolutely. We'll talk to it.
I first watched it when my brother rented it, and I watched it when he rented it, and I really liked it. I actually really wanted a Mini Cooper because of this movie up till a couple years ago.
I also have never seen the original one with Michael Caine from 1969.
Young Michael Caine.
I was really interested to see it. Like, it's actually something that's been on my list to watch for a really long time, and just never really got around to it. And then when we started this podcast, I was like, well, I'm not going to watch it until we cover the movie on the episode. So,
well, good thing I chose it. You're welcome, Mike.
Yep. And then, yeah, why don't you just do you got a synopsis, a summary, a
I got a nice little concise summary for the 1969 The Italian Job. It is a comic caper movie about a plan to steal a gold shipment from the streets of Turin, Italy, by creating a traffic jam.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anonymous.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Nice little concise. It's one sentence summary. It's amazing.
Wow. Pretty good, better than I could have done. Good job. So, this movie's a weird movie. I did not expect it to be as weird as it was.
Yeah, I didn't know it was like a comedy.
And
I mean, because I watched the new one first, and obviously that was a good thriller action movie, and I did not expect a comedy going into the original.
Especially with it being British in the 60s. Like, they had comedy, but, what's weird is this one was a little, like, zany and just weird.
It was weird.
And British comedy is either, well, if you look at things like The Mighty Boosh with, like, Old Greg, it definitely can get weird. But I always imagine, like, older comedy to be more like The Office, where it's a little bit of dry humor. And this was just, like, weird.
Awkward. It was just awkward humor.
Yeah. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit.
No, definitely.
What was really funny was, so my mother-in-law came into town for a couple of days just to help us, like, unpack and organize and stuff, which was really nice. Hilarious. I really appreciate it, Marta. But she came over, and we had, just a little bit of time to kill. And so I started watching the movie, and she was, like, unpacking and stuff like that. And she sat down and watched the movie with me for a good, like, 15, 20 minutes. And we were laughing and everything like that. So I had to pause the movie to go get the laundry or something. And I come back and I tell Katrina, I'm like, oh man, this movie's like really good. I really like it. It's awesome. My wife goes, oh yeah, well, Mom says it was terrible. And I'm like, as she was, and I'm like, I look over at my mother-in-law and I'm like, you've been laughing this entire movie. How could you say it's terrible?
This is a horrible movie. It's like when I watched Jackass.
It's really weird.
It is super weird.
And there are a lot of things in it to me that didn't really make sense. And I guess we should
tons
just
of stuff.
Go through it. But like, what's weird is it starts with this guy driving a Lamborghini up in the mountains.
Can I just say I was like super scared during that whole scene? Like I'm afraid of heights.
POV shot?
Yeah,
it was really weird. Like you just see this like it looks like it could be a car commercial. This Lamborghini driving through the mountains in Italy, and at first you just see it taking these turns really tight, and you just see like the names popping up for the opening credits, and all of a sudden it switches to like a POV shot for like a minute and a half, and he's going like really fast around these curves. Yeah, I got a little car sick.
I got scared. I was like, oh shit, he's gonna die.
Well, he did.
He did, but not in the way I expected.
Yeah, so what did he crash into? Did he just crash into the wall?
No, he crashed into that bulldozer thing, right?
Okay, I didn't see the bulldozer. I must have like looked away. All I saw was...
No. So you see him go into the tunnel, and then he takes a turn, and then a large explosion.
Okay, so you don't actually see the impact.
No, you don't.
Okay. I got you. So
but it was a really big explosion for what it was.
I mean, the car was going like 1,000 miles an hour in these mountains.
Oh, wow, that's really fast.
No, actually, I looked it up. That car was a Lamborghini, and it had a top speed of 170 miles an hour. So
it's probably going that
much slower than I said it was going just now. 1,000 miles per hour was a
you were close, Mike.
Bit hyperbolic.
No, you got it. You were close.
So
I'll give it to you.
That was weird about this is you see this guy crash, and you think like he's like a big deal to the movie, and he is, and he isn't. So he dies.
He is to set up the story, but that's
to an extent. But like he never comes. Of course, he died. Of course, he's not gonna come back. But it wasn't like. So this guy dies, and basically the premise of the movie was that this guy, his name was Roger. He was supposed to be doing this like caper where we were gonna steal a bunch of gold from the mafia in Italy. Well, then he died, and Charlie Croker was getting out of prison. That's Michael Caine's character. And he talks to this guy named Mr. Bridger, who is like a kingpin of crime in London. And he's like, I better never see you here in prison again, you son of a bitch. And so he goes and like we'll talk a little bit more about what actually happens, but ultimately somebody tells him that they want Charlie to finish the job. And he sets up this whole caper. And the thing that's weird is he bangs this dude's widow, the guy who died at the beginning of the movie.
She initiated.
She did. And then but then they go to a funeral that's not his. They go to a funeral for somebody named like Aunt May, who never really showed up in the movie. So when I was taking notes for this movie, there's a point where I'm like, oh, they're at Roger's funeral. And then they say Aunt May this. And I'm like, wait, who the fuck is Aunt May? I had no idea who it was. Did you know who it was?
No, I have no clue.
And they start talking like all
the
characters.
It was like way later too.
Yeah, it was like just before the caper started. And they're
it was Mr. Bridger watching the film for what they were gonna do, and then he sees the mafia guy, and he's like, "We have a funeral to go to." What?
Yeah, and then like I'm thinking it's gonna be like I said, Roger's funeral because he was the guy in charge of the caper originally, and they're all talking about the caper still, and eventually like, oh, it's your time to speak, Mr. Bridger. And they go to, and then he starts talking about a woman. He's like, it's really important that you guys get this done, and like, if you don't get it done, you better come back in a casket yourself, because even though she's dead, Aunt May would still bop you one or something like that. And I'm like, who? I had no idea what that was.
I don't know. It was weird.
So what are some highlights for you in this movie, Double D?
I was really interested in how it was all film notes instead of like letters and stuff. Like they planned it all out through film, which was really weird. The Mini Cooper scenes, of course. I mean, nothing really like wow in this movie. But
I had a few wow moments in this movie, but it was more like not the stuff like so. Michael Caine is an amazing actor, especially if you look at like his filmography of the last 10, 15 years. As like Alfred, all the different Christopher Nolan movies he's been in. He's an amazing actor and a major part of cinema today.
Yep.
And in this movie, he's supposed to be this like sexual icon. And he's super funny looking, right? He's not a good looking dude. I mean, now granted, he's British. Sorry to any British people listening. I'm not mean to be offensive. But British people, are not necessarily known for being super good looking.
But Michael Caine.
But like Michael Caine, at the beginning of the movie, he gets out of prison and his girlfriend meets him and takes him to this hotel, and she's in a stolen car, and he makes a comment on it. He's like, I've been out of prison for 5 minutes and I'm already in a hot car. She stole the car from the Palestinian prime minister or something like that.
Yep.
And she takes him to a hotel and she opens the door and there's like 10 beautifully scantily clad women. And she goes, here's your coming out party gift. Like, you can have whoever you want. Like, telling him he can like bang one of them.
Yeah, and I want them all.
Well, I want them all. And then it like fades to black, and then you see him come out of the hotel room, and he's all like slightly disheveled, his shirt's slightly untucked, his top button's undone, and he's just like.
And that's when he goes to the widow's room, and then he continues with the widow.
Right. So when he checked into the hotel, he had like a message, and it was like, meet me at this room at midnight. And so he goes up there, and it was Roger's widow, and she's saying, hey, Roger would want you to finish the job. And he's like, I don't know. And she goes, you don't even have to plan it. He's already got most of it planned and everything. And then she was just like, you should fuck me. And then he does. And then
what she said was, I still have 4 hours.
That's right. He goes, we need to kill some time or whatever. And she's like, I've got 4 hours. And then he bangs her. And then what's weird is to go a step further, in the next scene, he goes to like a garage. He gets his car back from, some guy who's been storing it for him. And then he goes to I don't know if it's his house, but it's in like the middle of like a warehouse, and there's like shit everywhere. And his girlfriend comes in and starts screaming. And you see 3 scantily clad women run out, and she's like throwing shit at him. And then he's like, I thought it was okay. She's like, why would you think it was okay? And he's like, at the hotel room, you let me fuck like 10 people.
That was your coming out present.
That was your coming out party. It's not okay now. And it's like, this guy is able to, who just got out of prison, is able to get a ton of tail.
3 women at a time. And those weren't paid for.
And those weren't paid for. Well, I mean, you don't know that.
Well, I suppose.
And this movie's set up to be a comedy, in that same scene when the girlfriend is getting mad at him, like not the mafia turns up, but some of Mr. Bridger's people show up.
Yeah, to give him a one-over.
Yeah, which I didn't understand, because at this point he hadn't done anything illegal, he didn't do anything, like he was just out living his life. And so they like beat him up, and then like it was like he's not wearing any pants because he was just plowing a bunch of girls. And then he's like, you wouldn't hit somebody not wearing trousers, would you? And then I really don't understand why those guys were sent there to beat him up. Because
was that before or after that was after he took the job, right?
That was after he took the job, but Mr. Bridger didn't know anything about the job, because a few scenes, like the next scene, Charlie breaks back into prison. And that's the thing, is this Mr. Bridger guy is like running he
like owns the place.
Yeah, he owns. Well, no, like they mentioned that he paid off like the warden and all the guards and stuff. He's still running his criminal empire from prison, and he's able to get out of prison whenever he wants. Like he leaves for the funeral.
Oh yeah,
and he leaves for something else too. But like Charlie breaks into prison to talk to him, and he says like, "I need you to like finance the job." And he's like, no, go fuck yourself. And the only reason he ultimately does this, he reads a newspaper saying that Fiat is leaving Italy and is going to have a new factory in China. And he's all concerned about England's economy. So, and this movie's really weird in that it has primarily it's a British versus everybody else, but then it's like EU versus like if they can't look over England, then they're going to look over the EU. So he's like pissed about the economy. And so they want to steal, like somehow stealing gold is going to fix the European economy. when he's stealing it from another crime organization. Like, that's the gist of the plot,
because they're going to use all that money in England.
Right.
Help the GDP.
Yeah, and then there's like a point. Oh man, this movie was really, really weird. Like, the music in this movie was really weird.
They played the same song for like 20 minutes at the end.
And oh man, there's this other scene. So then that scene where they're going and getting his car back from this guy in the garage, and the guy, it was weird. So I looked it up. The scene was improvised, and the guy who like stored the car, he's like, "Oh, by the way, because you were gone for so long, like your garage fees are several $100s." And like Michael Caine
like
grabs a wallet
euros.
from the several €100, grabs like a wallet from the hood of the car, which they call the bonnet.
Yeah.
And they start doing this thing. The guy's like, "Oh, you've been gone for so long. Where were you?" He's like, "I was shooting tigers in India." And the guy goes, "You must have shot a lot of tigers." He goes, "Yep, I had a machine gun." I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. And
proper fun.
Yeah, and then oh man, so yeah, he talks to Mr. Bridger on the phone and tells him about the plan, and the guy's like, "You can't spell big," and he goes, "B-I-G," and then it fades to black. Like, there's all these just like weird transitions.
B-I-G, big.
And like Mr. Bridger's cell was covered wall to wall, floor to ceiling with pictures of the Queen.
Yeah. And the guy gave him that picture of the Queen too.
Yeah.
Just to please him.
Yeah. And then, like, so basically, I think, just to summarize most of this movie, they start getting, like, recruiting all the people for the cape. There's, like, 10, 15 people that they've got for this job, which I think is way too many if you're trying to keep it secret.
Just Charlie.
Right.
And then it's like Charlie, a whole panel of people. Like, what the hell?
Like 10 people. And then the only person that they didn't have yet was they needed a computer professor so that way they can hack the traffic lights and create a traffic jam. And so they go and get Benny Hill, and there was supposed to be something weird about him. I didn't really catch it because they were talking all British, but they go to visit him, and they're like, what if he's not Ben? Which I know means, like, you know, maybe he can't be, like, bought off and paid for to be a criminal. But then, like, they go and see this woman, and the woman was all, like, saying that he's, like, crazy and that he did something weird, which I couldn't comprehend.
So what happened was he messed around with the maid, who is a large girl. So I guess he's just perverted for large women.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they get him, and then it just shows... I did like this next part. So they got everybody in a room, and like you said, they're filming. Somehow they had a film of all the stuff that they were going to do.
Yeah, it's so weird.
They start going over it, and like one guy who works for Mr. Bridger's like all upset and goes like, "I want to be a driver." And he's like, "We've got the 3 best drivers. Like, you can't, you know." And then they go and like practice, and so like they just have like one car go off of a jump, and it just crashes. And then
I didn't understand what his objective was there. Well, it was just a ramp with a wall at the end.
Well, they were supposed to, because they were going downstairs, and there's another spot where they like jumped onto that big roof. So I think they were just practicing how to jump. And Charlie's like, "You need to use your brakes." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And then the guy gets in the second car, and he jumps, and he brakes, but he crashes into the second car, the original car. And so they call Mr. Bridger, and he's like, "I need more cars." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Practice makes perfect." Everything. Which I appreciate that, like, if you're going to be doing some crazy car stunts, you need to, like, know that you can actually do it and on the day, and you need to practice it. So I get that. But the problem I had with it is they were practicing it without the gold in the car, so the car would be weighted differently.
Way heavier.
Right.
Which they addressed later in the new movie, but
yes, they did. And so the other thing that's really funny is so the whole thing is they're actually going to be like this convoy, and they're going to steal the gold from an armored truck. Like, they're going to blow up the truck on the street, right? So they're practicing it, and like the guy who's doing the dynamite just like destroys the entire truck. And Michael Caine was like, "You're only supposed
to blow off the doors.
You're only supposed to blow up the bloody doors." And apparently that's number 33 on the most memorable lines of all time in British cinema.
Really?
Yeah.
Apparently. That's really interesting.
That's what my research says, Double D. Do you doubt my research?
No, I'm just
You better
blown
not, you
away
son of a
by that
bitch.
fact. I trust you, Michael. I trust
Okay,
you
cool.
with these facts.
Okay,
Not with
good.
my life, but with these facts.
Oh, you don't trust me with your life? I trust you with my life, Double D.
Well, I'm trustworthy.
Are you?
Sometimes.
You say dogs can't look up.
What?
You told me dogs can't look up.
I have never said that in my life.
No, you didn't. That's from Shaun of the Dead. So that's same, right? So that same guy who blew up the truck has a lot of weird, like, comical moments. Like, there's a point when they're actually they're like gonna break into the place to switch out the tape that runs the computer. Like, it's like because the computers run on like magnetic tape. That's how you program it. And like they go in, and he's got these like giant bolt cutters, and as they're like sneaking around, he's doing like everybody else is just kind of like walking crouched. And
he's
just
doing
like
the sneak walk,
like the sneak walk on his tiptoes, and the whole time he's like snipping the bolt cutters while he's walking, and the professor guy kind of like pushes him away. Yeah, and then like the same guy later on, while they're doing the actual caper, and they're driving through like the buildings in Italy. He steals a chicken from somebody in a restaurant, like they're driving by, and he just grabs a chicken. Like, that's the kind of humor this is. It's like, it'll be like a serious like caper movie, and then it just has weird shit like that.
I got a kick out of when they were actually replacing the program. The professor was checking his pockets, looking for a screwdriver, and that guy actually reaches under his arm while
under his arm. I wrote that down too. Like, he like
puts a screwdriver in his face. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. He's weird. I wrote that down too. And so like one of the other big scenes, like the big dramatic scene of the movie is right before they go to do the caper. This didn't really make sense to me, like why the mafia was sitting here. Like there's no way they could have known these guys were coming, but they're like coming through the same mountain pass that Roger died in. And they all have like in their cars, so like Michael Caine's in his Aston Martin, and then you have got a couple people in like a few other cars.
Was it Jaguars?
It's some Jaguars, and they show up, and you just see like dozens of dudes in black and white suits with machine guns. And
even the guy driving the bulldozer was in a suit. That was great.
Yeah. And then so like they just sit there, and like the mafia guy was like explaining that this is where Roger died, and he can show him how it happened, and then he uses the bulldozer to like smash one car, and then he says something else and smashes the second car, and then like he throws the Aston Martin off the edge, and it has a huge explosion. And then Charlie's like, if you kill us, you'll be making a grave error. There are 250,000 Italians in London. They'll suffer. And he goes, every restaurant, cafe, ice cream parlor, gambling den, and nightclub in London, Liverpool, and Glasgow will be smashed. Like, why does he think he's that important that every restaurant that's owned by Italians going to get destroyed? That's bullshit.
I feel like he probably knew more about Mr. Bridger, and that's why he was.
But still, I feel like that's
that threat.
An extreme reaction.
You get all 250,000 Italians,
right? And then the other thing, just because we're going pretty long for this movie, I just want to talk about some of the things that I thought were funny that we haven't brought up yet. Like, so when they break into the factory or the facility to hack into the traffic lights, they need to divert the power, and so Charlie literally just throws a bike over a fence onto like a transformer grid, and it shorts out the entire thing. Like, he just picks up a bike, and he just starts walking away, and you see all these cops drive by him as he's standing right next to the thing that's like sparking like crazy.
They don't stop for anything. They
don't stop for anything. He's just standing there. And then like the day of the job, they all are like complaining that they don't want to sit in the back seat of the car, and they're like, one guy's like, I have asthma, the other guy's like, I get car sick, and the other guy's like, all three of them are just like, I don't want to sit back there. And Charlie's like, you're gonna sit back there, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, why is this even a thing that we're talking about? He's like, you're not gonna have asthma, you're not gonna have a migraine, you're gonna sit in the back seat. And then the other thing that I just thought was weird was, though, there was like security cameras all over the town, right? And there was this guy who was just like throwing these boxes around that like took out the security cameras, but he was wearing like the most like conspicuous outfit. He was wearing like a big jacket, and he was wearing like a red and white striped scarf, and then he was wearing a giant pin that said something like London or something like that. And then he had a big bag that he had all the, like, the magnetic bombs or something. I don't know what they were. That had, like, London Jack on it. Really conspicuous.
It was supposed to be a soccer match going on between Italy and England. So he was trying to be a fan, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, but it's still super conspicuous.
Super over the top.
Right. And then
those giant boxes he was throwing in the garbage.
Get to, like, the end of the movie. So, like, they do the caper thing. I think the only thing that was really kind of funny with the caper, like I already talked about how they were, like, messing with people as they were driving around, taking their food and stuff. There's a point where they, like, drive into a mini factory and, like, park in the mini factory for a second to, like, evade the police. But when they actually go to stop the armored truck, there's, like, a bunch of soldiers with, like, guns and a guy with the tank with the water cannon. And these guys are going and just beating them up with, like, 2x4s.
Yeah, it was random. Like, where did they even get 2x4s?
Yeah, so they just, like, park next to these things that are just hitting them with 2x4s. And these guys have machine guns. It was weird. But why don't you wrap up the very end? Tell us how this movie ended.
So they drive all the minis into the bus driven by, what was his name? Big something, right? Big William, I don't remember. I think. Big Will. That was great. That was a good name. So they drive all the minis in there. They take off all the gold. They dump all the minis over cliffs. And then they're getting away on the bus. And then they take a sharp turn, and the bus is literally hanging halfway over the cliff. And that's how we end the movie.
Yeah, so the thing is with this movie, I had a lot of problems streaming this movie. I kept having, like, I don't know if it was my internet connection was bad, but I was able to watch, like, the first 40 minutes no problem. And then I tried to finish the movie on 2 different dates. And I would be able to watch, like, 10 to 15 minutes in, like, 45 minutes. It was buffering so bad. So I did not watch the last 10 minutes of this movie. So this morning, while I was waiting for you to, like, get on this on the call, I found the last 10 minutes on YouTube. I had no idea it ended on a cliffhanger. Like, literally a cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger, pun intended.
And apparently there was going to be a sequel to this movie that they were going to, like, the mafia was going to come and, like, drag the bus off the side of the cliff to, like, inadvertently saving the crew, but to get their gold back. And the second movie was going to be them stealing the gold again.
I could see that happening.
But the way the movie actually ended was pretty funny. Like, they're trying to counterweight the bus so, you know, Michael Caine can get some of the gold. And then he's realizing it keeps sliding, so it lays down and he goes, I've got an idea. It'll only take a minute, and then it just fades to black.
That was good.
Yeah, weird movie. Really weird movie.
It was a weird movie, and I'm glad we watched it.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. It was definitely weird. And it wasn't anything like I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be more of a 60s action movie.
It was more like Austin Powers.
Yeah, it definitely had some elements to it. Yeah, I guess we should just dive into the next one, the 2003 one. Why don't you set that one up for us, buddy?
All right, let's see here. Let's do this one. After a gang of professional thieves successfully robbed $35 million in gold bars from a safe held by Italian gangsters in Venice, they are betrayed and left for dead by one of their ally. Seeking for revenge, they plan an incredibly elaborate heist against the traitor to get the gold back. That's pretty good, too.
Pretty good. You know, it's weird that... So the beginning of the movie starts off with Charlize Theron, like, just, like, in her PJs. And this was, like, 2003. This is, like, peak Theron. Like, she looked beautiful at the beginning of this movie, right? And I was like...
Yeah, I have to agree with you.
Yeah, she looked amazing. And then, like, she's getting a call from her dad. And her dad is Donald Sutherland.
Yep.
And it's weird, like, I feel like he should have had Michael Caine in that role.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Like, why not have it? And
good callback.
Yeah, it would have been a good callback. He would have only had to been there for, like, a couple of days. Like, it would have been 2 or 3 days worth of shooting. And get him, you know, in there. And it would have been a nice callback to that movie. He does have a callback when they're on the phone with somebody. I don't remember who it is, but there's a movie that's on. The original Alfie is on, and he was in that. So you do see him in the movie because he was on a movie that they were watching, and that was the way they called back to him.
Maybe he didn't want to have any part of it. Maybe he's not proud of that movie.
It's considered one of Britain's like greatest movies though, so it'd be weird that he wouldn't be like super into like appearing in it. And at this time he was, I guess this was pre-Batman Begins, so he wasn't like huge in America yet.
Yeah, but neither was Donald Sutherland.
This movie, I didn't look up the actual budget, but like researching it, it said that this was almost a direct-to-DVD movie. Like it said that it was initially only released in 64 theaters, and then it did really well in those theaters, so they expanded it because they thought they wanted to be considered a blockbuster and reach $100 million. So they ended up expanding it to like 1,500 theaters. So
that's
originally they didn't have a lot of faith in this movie, I guess.
Well, yeah, they had Seth Green.
Right. Well, you know what? I love Seth Green. I've always loved Seth Green.
I have not.
You don't like Seth Green?
I am not a fan of Seth Green.
Why?
I don't know. He just comes off so like bad. I don't know. I don't even have a word for it. He's offsetting.
That's weird. I think he's great. I loved him in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was great in the Austin Powers movies. Like he's arguably the best part of those movies.
I mean, I understand. Like he plays the role well, but I also feel like that's the only role he plays.
Yeah, that's true. Like he's very much a character actor. Like he didn't step out his wheelhouse very far.
No, not at all.
He did do an amazing impression of Jason Statham though in this movie.
Yeah, when he was talking to Becky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
So this movie is what's interesting is, so it's not a remake per se. Mark Wahlberg plays Charlie Croker, and then Donald Sutherland plays John Bridger. So like they keep some of the names, but other than that, the only things that are really the same are some major plot points, but the overall story is different. So they're still stealing gold. They use minis, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's it.
But it was a really great movie. Like I liked how the beginning of the movie started with a caper. Like that kind of caper really could be a finale in a different movie. Now, granted,
it was the beginning of this one.
The finale that we got was really good. Like it was pretty great. But like it was interesting how it started with a really big caper, and it was really cool. It started with a big boat chase and like destroying like 3 floors of like a old like mansion in Italy.
Very precision based.
Yeah, and so like it shows you right off the bat like who these characters are, what they're about, what their specialties are. Like this movie doesn't do a ton to set up the backgrounds of each of the characters, but it does it efficiently. So like even before they actually have like this little montage of who every character is, you kind of have a little bit of an idea who they are. Like you know
what they're doing.
That Jason Statham's the wheelman. You know that Mos Def is the demolitions expert, and you know that Seth Green is the hacker and Charlie is the leader, and it does it really well. And then to actually like really tie in to give him a little bit of background when Charlie is trying to get what was her name? What was Charlize Theron's character's name? Stella. When he's trying to get Stella to like get in on the gig, it does a little background, and you see that like Handsome Rob, played by Jason Statham, like is famous across the country for being in the longest police chase of all time. And Seth Green's character, he eventually goes by Napster, because he invented, his name is Lyle, but he invented Napster, and the guy who Sean Parker stole it from him.
Yeah.
And they actually had Sean Parker in the movie playing himself, stealing the disc
stealing
that had
the
Napster
floppy
on
disk.
it. Yeah. And then you had Mos Def. Man, my brain is not working today. He had Mos Def playing left ear, and he's deaf in one ear because he put a cherry bomb too close to his ear when he was in elementary school.
He blew up a toilet, and he couldn't hear anything.
Yeah. And so like they do a really good job telling you what these characters are about, and I legitimately liked every single character throughout this movie.
Even Edward Norton.
Now, you know what? I like Edward Norton as an actor, and what's funny is anytime we see him in something, Katrina gets upset. Like she really doesn't like, like she doesn't get upset. Like I'm not going to watch this movie, but she really doesn't like Edward Norton. And you know, I guess being gentlemen of our age, like we like him because Fight Club is such a big movie.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, Katrina, I don't know if you heard that, but she was just like, I just get annoyed by him. And I used to think that like he's a super talented guy that people keep kind of like shitting on. Like he got kind of fucked over by Marvel with the Hulk. But then I found out that, it was because he was being a little bit of a prima donna about it. And ultimately he may have been right, but like he was like vocally pissed at Marvel. So they ended up dropping him and replacing him with Mark Ruffalo. Well, in this movie, it turns out he did not want to do this movie. He signed a 3-picture deal with I don't remember who actually produced this movie, but whatever like studio produced this movie. He signed a 3-picture deal with them in 1996. And then he did one movie, and they kept pressuring him to do another, and he kept saying no to all the scripts, so they forced him to do this movie. And he was pissed about it. And so apparently he was like a dick to everybody on set. At the end of the day, like this movie did a lot better than they thought it was going to do financially, so they got all the actors and crew like gift bags. And he like wrote a letter to the director and the producer saying, give this bag to somebody that you actually like, who actually likes you. And basically was like, fuck you guys. I don't want anything to do with this movie.
What the hell? Man?
Yeah, apparently he's a dickhead.
Oh, well, he's a good actor.
He's a good actor, but apparently he's a dickhead.
I didn't like his mustache, if we want to talk about things we didn't like about him.
I think that you weren't supposed to like it. I think that was supposed to make him look all swarmy and like a piece of shit.
Oh, yeah. Well, it worked.
Yeah, it did work. So why don't you hit us with the highlights of the movie?
There's like the entire movie's a highlight. You just got to watch the movie. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. And they set up a bunch of stuff at the beginning of the movie that pays off at the end. Like there's a point where it's interesting that they actually went through with this like opening heist, but they've got all these different people who are doing stuff, and Edward Norton had his own crew doing stuff. So his name was Steve. And Donald Sutherland's character, John, calls him and he's like, hey, your guys aren't here yet. And he's like, they'll be here. And he goes, you got to trust me. And he goes, I trust everybody. I don't trust the devil inside them.
Yep.
And like it's like a little throwaway line, and like it moves on instantly. And then at the end of the movie, like it comes into play and it sets the rest of the movie off in motion.
Stella gives it away.
Right. So Stella is John's daughter. And so this basically the premise of this movie is they do this big heist where they steal $35 million worth of gold from like the mob in Italy. And Steve betrays them. Like he actually shoots John in the chest. And as soon as that happens, Jason Statham like drives off of a dam.
Off a bridge.
Yeah, bridge, dam, whatever it was, into like this icy water. And luckily they have like scuba tanks in there. And so they're like breathing from the scuba tanks. And Steve is just like unloading machine guns into the water, hoping that they're dead. So eventually they just like push John's body up so it looks like they're all dead. And they decide they're going to get revenge, so they go to get Stella, who's Donald Sutherland's John's character, daughter, who is also a safecracker.
Yeah, but is she works with the police, right?
Yeah, she works with the police, and she also like repairs safes. And so they try to get her, and she's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And apparently like her and Charlie kind of had a thing in the past, because she's like, I told you never see me again.
He totally wanted it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they both wanted each other.
But
then the rest of the movie is just them setting up this heist, and they did a great job with it. Like it was very Ocean's 11. They set up every single detail, and like it was thoroughly enjoying watching them do it. And me living in Los Angeles now, I had a whole new appreciation for this movie, because like Handsome Rob goes through and they're trying to figure out how much time it's going to take for them to get from Steve's house to Union Station, which is where they're going to go. And he goes, I did it 30 times, and with an average time of 30, with a max of 50, and the quickest time 18 minutes or something like that. And like the route that they're going, like as he's driving, I now recognize almost every street that they've been on, because they're driving through like Hollywood for the most part.
Yeah.
And like I work over in West Hollywood, so like they're actually a point where they drive by where I work. Like I see the street that I work on, and it was really funny. And like seeing the traffic, like I have a whole new appreciation for that scene. Like it's awful sometimes.
18 to 50 minutes.
Yeah, that's
given
crazy.
The day.
And
but
go ahead.
I really liked everything about this movie. I mean, safe cracking, cars. They even stripped down the cars, addressed the weight issues. They did all the practice runs. It was really cool all around. I really like that part where Charlie takes Mos Def to the guy to buy the
Skinny Pete.
Yeah, the explosives and the Skinny Pete.
It is a giant
it's
Samoan
like,
dude.
Don't stare at him. Yeah. That was really good. I was really surprised that was only $5,000 worth, though.
Yeah, that was a really great deal. $5,000, and he got like some like chemical smoke bombs, like really crazy launcher. Detonation paint. Like, yeah, it was pretty crazy. And I don't really understand. Like, they set it up to be funny, where they go and he goes like, "Don't stare." He doesn't like it when you stare, and
he's like confounded.
He's confounded, and it's like, you knew what he needed. The guy, Mos Def's character left here only needed 2 things. Like, why would you not just come by yourself and risk pissing off this guy that you need by having a guy come in and stare at him?
Comedic value,
right? But it was for comedy. I'm for it.
I'm for it too. I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot.
What's really weird about this movie, they have to have, to make some more tension, they have to have Stella kind of seduce Steve a little bit, because they need to have a window to get him out of the house. So like, they use her to break into the house, not break into the house, but to pretend to be like a part of the cable company to like fix his cable, because they took out his cable so that they can get like a layout of his house. And like, he's super into her, which I get it. Like, I totally get him wanting to.
You would have hit on that cable lady too.
Yeah, she's beautiful, beautiful, and so like they were originally going to break into the house while she was on the date with him, but then there was a party at the neighbor's house, so they couldn't do anything. And it was really funny. The reason they had to use minis is like they couldn't get a truck close enough. Like, they could get a truck in the driveway, but it was like 100. They said it was like 125-foot hallway or distance between the safe and the gate, and that would be like no way that they can carry all that gold. So they needed to get they measured the hallway, and it was like, it's wide enough for a Mini Cooper, and that's why they used minis, because they wanted to tie it back to the original movie.
But then they didn't actually end up using that same strategy, but they kept the minis, which was awesome.
Well, they were going to use that strategy, but ultimately what happened is, when they're on the date, and this is what sets off the chain of events that changes everything, is they're on the date, and Steve wants her to like come back to his place, and he's like, "Oh, I won't even try anything. Like, we can go get a hotel room or whatever, and you can meet me there." And he's like, "What? You don't trust me?" And then she uses the line, "Oh, I trust everyone. I don't trust the devil inside." And then he figures out that she knows John, and he like grabs her, and he's like about to like break her wrist, and then like the entire crew shows up, and he's like, "Oh shit, you're not dead, fuck." And
then Marky Mark punches him in the face.
Punches him. You know what? I had one problem with this movie.
What?
So this movie's PG-13, which means they can only have one fuck, right?
Yep.
So there's a point when the big fat guy, Skinny Pete, is talking to somebody, and basically what happened is Steve killed.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so Steve ended up killing the guy who's been buying his gold, because the guy who's been buying the gold mentions that somebody's been asking about it. And so he's like, "Who did you talk to?" So he kills him, and then it goes to like, it keeps going up a chain, and eventually gets to Skinny Pete, and the guy's like, "It's the freaking mob," or something like that, or like, "Don't freaking mess with me." And I was like, this criminal would not say freaking. So as soon as that happened, it kind of yanks me out of the movie, because I was like, he's
a gentle giant, man. He's a gentle giant.
But he also like, right. But he's still like a mob guy, and they're saying like he'll like kill you if you look at him funny. So
what was the other guy's name? Moskov?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was some Ukrainian name.
Motherfucking Ukrainian.
Yeah, that's what he says. Mother freaking Ukrainians. Yeah, that's the line. And I'm like, he would say motherfucking Ukrainians at the time. If he's like that afraid for his life, there's no way he says mother freaking. So that kind of yanks me out of the movie. It was like that episode of The Walking Dead that everybody got pissed off at, when Ricky's like, "You're freaking with the wrong people." Like, it just sounds...
Yeah, I hated that.
It's not tough. Like, it doesn't sound right. And so it yanks me out of the movie, and I realize, I'm like, oh, because they're going to say fuck somewhere else. Like, they're going to use their F-bomb somewhere else. And they did. Like, it was Steve who did it. And, yeah, like, I wrote it down. He goes, so because he knew what was going on now, he decides to move his gold somewhere. So he gets like an armored truck. He gets 3 armored trucks, a bunch of motorcycles, and they do like a whole diversion thing. And Charlie, played by Mark Wahlberg, was like, we can still pull off the caper because we still control the traffic, because they had Lyle hack into like the traffic mainframe and like he can control the lights. So they're like, we can still do it. So they ended up like diverting this truck to like a place where they have like a detonation device set up where it's going to fall through the street. So it falls through the street, and then they drop like one of those big metal plates that they used to cover the street when they're repairing it. And Edward Norton goes, where the fuck is my truck?
Yep.
And I'd be like, that fuck
lame.
didn't make as much sense. Like, it felt a little bit more forced. It could have been like, shit, where's my truck? Or where the hell's my truck? What happened to my truck?
Where's the truck? Where's the truck?
Yeah, that would have been a better use of the fuck earlier, when it was like, motherfucking Ukrainians. That would have been a much better line.
I can see that.
I'm really upset that they didn't do it.
You need to start writing movies.
Nah, I'm not going to do that. And then what's weird about this movie is, this Ukrainian dude killed a bunch of dudes. Like, when he shows up to Skinny Pete, he's got like a machete, and it's like covered in blood, which means like he clearly like tortured somebody else with this machete, and that's why like Skinny Pete gave up Charlie. And like Charlie, like, it's done off screen, like you don't actually see it, but then when they actually finally get the gold and they get Steve, the Ukrainians come, and like Steve thinks he's going to be on his side, and it turns out he's not, because they figure, like, they tell him like, hey, we're going to give you Steve. Steve's the guy who killed your cousin. And
they don't even care about
I forgot where I was going with this.
It's okay, Mike. Take a second.
Fuck, I don't remember where I was going with this. I'm going to have to cut this whole shit out. Where was I going with this, Double D?
I don't know where the Ukrainian guy, Steve. Steve thought it was going to be with the Ukrainian. I don't know, man. What are you trying to say?
I don't know. Anyway, he should have said motherfucking Ukrainians.
He should have.
Yeah, I really don't.
That would have made more sense
with this. Oh
well. So for Wrench, the guy that Jason Statham, Handsome Rob, brought on for the car work, they brought him in on the caper, but did they say they were going to give him more money, or they were just going to bring him on board?
No, they were going to share.
He was only doing the work for $10,000.
Well, that was originally what they were going to do. No, he said, there's like a little scene here where he goes, hey, I want in, and I want in completely. Like, no more of this like half in shit or something like that. And Charlie's like, all right, you're part of the crew. So I think it's implied, and Charlie's a good guy. Like, they're not doing it for the money at this point. They're doing it to, for revenge.
Yeah, I get that.
And like, there's this whole thing where like, they all think that Steve is a joke, because at the beginning of the movie, just before Steve like turns on them, they're like, oh, what are you going to do with your portion? And Handsome Rob's like, oh, I'm going to go get this car. And then Lyle's like, I'm going to go buy a house, and I'm going to have a room for all my first edition books. And Lyle's like, I'm going to go get this stereo that's so powerful it'll blow off the clothes of a woman, right? And then Steve goes, I'll do a little bit of everything, right? And he actually did. Yeah. So they're all making fun of him because he had like no vision. Like, he was just so greedy. He wanted to move
imagination.
Money, but he had nothing that he was actually using it on, really. Like, nothing was his. And that was interesting. So at the end of the movie, that came into play. But yeah, it was never about gold for the rest of them, at least at that point. It was just about getting revenge. So of course they're going to give this guy money. At one point, Steve told them he only had like 2 bricks left, and that there was only like $4 million left, which is the amount of money from the original movie total. And so like, but they didn't care. They were going to go after it anyway. It turns out that there was $27 million left. The guy only used $8 million.
Yep. 27 million. And
Napster.
Why was Napster working at a airport carousel? Like, what was he doing there? Napster. Seth Green, Lyle.
Why was he working? Oh, why was he at that carousel?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's just where he was hiding out. Because he was supposed to be at Union Station. Because that was Union Station. That's where everybody was going to meet and then go their separate ways.
He couldn't have found a more private spot.
Yeah, right. He could have gone into like a bathroom or something.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know, but he was just hanging
that was
out.
Weird.
And he like screams.
And then he blames it on the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, the Holy Spirit, everybody. Let's see.
Should hop on board.
This, like you said, like, this movie's just really fun. And like, there's not... Like it's legitimately funny. Like, there's a scene where when they're trying to get Stella to look like she's part of the cable company, they need to find a uniform. So they're like scoping out like the place, and they see this girl named Becky, who's this like super attractive blonde, and they're like, well, how are we gonna get it? And he goes, I got it. And he goes and just starts hitting on her, and like you don't see it, like it's from inside the car. And Seth Green is like doing an impression, and he does a really great job, like Jason Statham voice, and he's like, oh, I'm Handsome Rob. We're going to go back to my place, and you're going to take your shirt off. You're just going to give me your shirt and everything. And he does it really well. And apparently, like, that scene took a long time to film because the director kept laughing.
Come on.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was a really good scene. Like, I thought Seth Green was hilarious in this movie. And, like, his whole thing, like, call me the Napster. And then, like, he's like, I'm not going to call you that. And he goes, he has a name. It's Handsome Rob. And he goes, well, he is handsome, and his name's Rob. And he goes, and his left ear. And he goes, well, yeah, he can't hear out of his left ear. And he goes, well, I want to be called the Napster. And like, everyone's like, we're not going to call you that. And he's like, well, then I'm not going to fucking hack your lights. Like, I'm out. Like, he's like acting like he's going to like ditch the job. And so they call him the Napster.
Napster.
Yeah, this movie was fun. Like, there's nothing I would like you said earlier, like the movie is just, the whole movie is fun from beginning to end. Like, there's not one thing we can really like fixate on other than the motherfucking Ukrainian line.
Motherfreaking.
But it should have been motherfucking.
But you heard it here, guys.
Yeah, you heard it here. That's what it should have been.
That's what it should have been.
So, I think it's safe to say that you think this movie was worth watching. But do you think the original movie really needed a remake?
Did it need one? I would say yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So I think it was a fun movie. It did its own thing. Like, this was a kind of movie that I like where it's not just a direct remake, where it makes it its own.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was legitimately fun. It was legitimately entertaining. And it was a different movie, but it had the spirit of the original. And I think especially in America, we needed it because apparently the original wasn't received well here. Like, there's actually an interview that Michael Caine did where he talks about how when he came here to do press for the movie, that all the posters showed him in like this suit holding a machine gun with like a naked woman with like a tattoo of a map of Italy on her back.
What the hell?
And he goes, and that's not what the movie is at all. So a lot of people in America were like pissed because it wasn't like what it was advertised to be.
This is weird, quirky comedy.
Yeah. So I actually absolutely think that this movie was worthwhile watching or worthwhile making, and it was fun.
Good job, Mark Wahlberg.
Mark.
Good job, Charlize.
Yeah, real good job.
Young Mark Wahlberg job. Still looks exactly the same.
Nah, he looks different. His face looks all wrinkled now.
Since we're talking about Mark Wahlberg, I would just like to say The Big Hit is one of my favorite movies ever.
The Big Hit. Which one is that one?
It's one of his early movies. Let me see if I can find out what year it was.
I hate it. I hate that movie. Just kidding, I've never seen it.
You know, a lot of people probably do. It was a really stupid movie, but I loved it.
Never even.
1998, he played Melvin Smiley in The Big Hit.
What is it about?
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about it on a different episode or a different podcast, Mike.
Big Hit. Socially anxious hitman Melvin Smiley, an expert in his lucrative field, goes on a job and falls in love with his kidnapping victim, turning his whole world upside down.
Yep, that's exactly what it is.
There you go. Was that hard, Double D? You couldn't just tell me that?
It was.
Jesus
I was trying to keep you in
Christ.
suspense, and now you don't let me do that.
Oh, okay.
You got a 6.1 out of 10. It's a terrible movie, but I loved it.
All right, so thank you guys for listening to Remake Rewind. You guys can check us out on Twitter and Instagram at MDXpods. You can check out us on our website, MDXpods. Also, listen to our other podcast that I do with my wife, Katrina. It's called Ruin My Childhood. Totally forgot the name of my podcast for a second because my brain does not work because I just moved and I'm very tired. Also, make sure to check out Get to the Podcast. That's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. They're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. They're pretty much everywhere. I'm going to be on that. Not this. Actually, yeah. By the time that this episode airs, it'll be a week after this episode. So next week, check out that episode, listen to it, help us out, and also if you want to throw a couple bucks our way and help us, pay for our web hosting, pay for just stuff, check out patreon.com/MDXpods if you want to help us out.
We would greatly appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, it helps us out a lot. And other than that, thanks for listening, guys.
Later.
I thought you were going to be rude and not say anything, Double D, and I was about to scold you on air. All right, take it easy, everybody. Bye.